Hello, hello. Welcome back. You are watching the Zenith Glow Astrology YouTube channel. My name is Christina and I am an astrologer, and I'm here to bring you the big news in the astrological world or something like that. Thanks for tuning in. Uh, Welcome. Yeah, we've got yet another big astrological event to discuss today, the upcoming Aries full moon. Before we get into it, please, if you would consider liking and subscribing to my channel, that is super supportive for me and I greatly appreciate it. I've also got some social media links I'm going to post in the description below. I also do readings if that's your kind of bag. And I also offer a beginner's astrology course, all of which I will post links in the description below. Thank you so much for letting me get that out of the way. All right. Aries supermoon, full moon, supermoon, super Aries, super full. It's really big. We have on October 6th. All right, this is October 6th at 11:47 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. So if you are on the other side of the world, it's actually going to be happening on October 7th for you. Convert that to your time zone. And this will be occurring at 14 degrees 8 minutes of Aries. Like I said, this is a supermoon. So we have feature number one that makes this a big deal. a big deal because it's a big moon. It's a supermoon. The moon will actually be the brightest supermoon of the year. It will be at its perigee, which means it is the closest to Earth. And then because this full moon is so close to the recent equinox, it will rise pretty low on the horizon. And it's going to kind of just hang out there and be really beautiful and big and golden. And it will actually spend multiple days in that position, whereas usually, it kind of moves pretty quickly because it is the moon. So it's very special. We've got an extra large, extra golden, beautiful, brightly lit, illuminated moon happening around the horizon. So if you're a photographer, that might be of interest to you. It will be again at peak illumination the night of October 6th, 11:47 p.m. Eastern Time, but it's pretty much going to be within that space, and you should be able to capture it even if you can't get there exactly at that day and time. So this is also known as the harvest moon. And that is very significant when we consider all the symbolism that goes into this moon and all of the astrological configurations that are happening within and around it. But yes, the horizon moon. I mean, I guess it is kind of a horizon moon because it's going to be hanging out there. But the harvest moon, it is certainly a time of harvest. Absolutely. And this is something that traditionally farmers would utilize the extra brightness of this moon to harvest their crops before the frost set in when they were getting towards that end of their harvest season. So, just a little, moon trivia for you there. All right. So, there's a lot going on with this moon. I feel like I say that about every single astrological alignment that we have. That's just kind of the vibe of this year, This is not a laid back, kick back, put your feet up kind of time. This is a time of transformation and huge shifts and huge levels up in your growth. And we're all getting into alignment with each of our own individual purposes and what is meant for us on our paths. And so each time we have one of these astrological events, whether it's a full moon or an equinox or an eclipse or whatever, a planet turning direct, it's helping to facilitate our shift into better alignment. Now, I want to note that this full moon has very, very strong feminine energy going into it. There's very, very strong divine feminine energy, and we're going to look at the planets here in a second to see the supporting evidence for that. But it's also just something that I got intuitively. There's also all of these comets that are in our solar system right now. Obviously, we've already talked about 3i Atlas, which technically is not a comet, it's an interstellar object, but potato, potato, however you want to consider that. I just posted a video about that. If you want to check that out, I'll put a link to that somewhere. Somewhere you'll be able to find it. Three-eye atlas, that I felt feminine energy coming from that as well. And then all the other comets. Now, I'm not breaking down all those comets per se and what each one symbolizes and what it's bringing to us. Use your own discernment with that. But I do think that there's strong feminine energy that comes through comets in general, which maybe is not something that everyone discusses. But it is bringing up the shadow, right? That's part of that feminine energy. It's sort of like something light emerging from the void and carrying with it this creative energy. But through the creative energy, or rather preceding the creative energy, we sort of have this destructive energy as well. And it's part of that whole divine feminine, like creation through destruction paradigm, right? So we have to break down and shed and release what needs to be released, and we need to dive into the shadow, and we need to face the darkness, and then recognize that we are within the darkness and we are the darkness and we are part of that. And that's also how we connect to the light. And then as we connect to the light, then we can move into our creative potential. You following me? So that's just a little snapshot. But let's look at the astrology. So we're going to start with which one? I've got multiple images for you. But we're just going to start with this one. So, sorry for the mess behind me. Okay, so here we have our configurations the night of the full moon. So once again, the moon's going to be at 14 degrees, 8 minutes of Aries. The sun will be exactly opposite in the sign of Libra. We have lots happening, and you'll notice that in this chart, and once again, as always, ignore the houses. The houses don't matter here. It's just the planets and the signs and their relationship to each other. You'll notice that I added in quite a few extra bodies. We have all of the goddess asteroids. We have Black Moon Lilith. We have asteroid Mary Magdalena, and we also have Chariklo, which is the feminine counterpart, the divine feminine wounded healer counterpart to Chiron. I added all these in because they are all significant at this time. They are all making important aspects. I'm not going to talk about every single one in detail, but we are going to cover some of the more important things that are happening. But just know, when you look at this, feminine, there's a lot of divine feminine energy, which is interesting because when you think about Aries, you wouldn't like immediately jump to that, right? Aries is a very masculine sign. It's ruled by Mars. It's the sign of the warrior and the pioneer. But I will say that, Aries being a cardinal sign, being the first sign in our zodiac, it in and of itself automatically implies this new beginning, this new chapter, something new is starting. But being a full moon, what we're seeing is something coming into culmination before that happens. And once again, it's the harvest moon. So we're harvesting all of this hard work, all these lessons, all these factors that we've been working through from a previous cycle as we are stepping into the next cycle. And that is part of the overarching symbolism of this full moon, part of the significance of it. So, but there is a whole bunch going on right now. So in this particular chart, I have highlighted one of our most important aspects that is occurring, or aspect patterns, I should say, which is, you guessed it, it's another yod. I feel like we've just been up to our ears in yods this year. And that is not easy energy to be working with, by the way, folks. So if you've been feeling the heat, and if you've been going a little bit crazy with running into detours and paradoxes and having issues, resolving dilemmas that feel like they're unresolvable, just know you're not alone. That's kind of, the general vibe that's been going on, occurring through different planetary expressions and different energies of the signs, but it's a repeating pattern. And once again, I've said it before, I'll say it again, yod aspect patterns carry this energy of divine realignment, because we have two inconjunct aspects forming an apex to a primary planet. In this case, we have Mercury at the apex of the yod, with Uranus and Neptune and Saturn forming inconjunct angles to Mercury. Those inconjunctions represent that paradox. They represent a detour. It's like different modes, different elements, they do not understand each other. So it really feels like it's an unresolvable problem. But the two planets that are forming the base of the triangle, again, Uranus and then the Neptune and Saturn conjunction, those are in sextile to each other. So those are simpatico. They're offering tools to each other. They are offering excitement, and they are feeding that energy towards Mercury. And Mercury's like, whoa, 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 I don't like this. Stop it, stop it, stop it. But Mercury's got a deal, right? And that's kind of what's going on here. So, yes, while we do have an Aries full moon, and we are going to, Mars's energy is getting involved with that. We are talking about illumination, culmination, harvest, release, shedding, the end of a cycle, the beginning of a cycle, all that stuff. Aries, the pioneer, the warrior, the baby, right, of the zodiac. We're starting something brand new. We have a special destiny, a special calling that we are being pulled towards. This is all funneled into the energy of that full moon. At the same time, Mercury plays a very important role here, because part of this funneling, part of this realignment, part of this new beginning involves divinely realigning the way that we express Mercury. And again, Mercury is our perception. It's our communication. It's the way that we see things. It's the way that we communicate with other people about what we see. It's how we view the world. And as a ruler of Gemini, and Virgo, which again, Uranus, one of our outer planets, which is aspecting Mercury through this yod, is in Mercury's sign of Gemini at this time, and it is retrograde. Mercury often deals with duality, because Gemini is about duality, right? And we live in a duality reality. Although it's not really a duality reality, but that is one perception, right, from one angle when we are looking at reality. And that is one that we often adopt when we are in a lower form of consciousness. Everything is polarized. It's always black and white. It's this versus that. It's good versus evil. And that's also how we learn, by comparison, right? And again, Mercury governs our learning. So with Mercury not only being at the apex of this yod, but it being at 0 degrees of Scorpio, 0 degrees, okay? This again signifies a new beginning. This is something brand new. This is fresh energy. We have to take a totally different perspective on things. Scorpio is the sign of transformation, right? It's also the sign most associated with shadow work and diving into the depths of the darkness, so to speak, within. So we are absolutely having our shadows brought up at this time, and especially shadows that revolve around perception and communication and the way that we learn, the way that we teach, okay? So ultimately, what's happening through this configuration is Uranus and Neptune Saturn are compelling Mercury to change the way that it expresses itself, to transform deeply, and to go deep within to examine Mercury, what it is that we do perceive, and why do we perceive things that way. Do we gain some sort of sense of false security? Do we feel like we are connecting with some sort of inner power by holding those perceptions? Does that actually limit us? Do we come up against power struggles because of the way that we communicate, because of how we look at the world? Are we too entrenched in polarized thinking? And do we view ourselves this way as well? So these are themes that are coming up at this time. and we are being asked to divinely realign. Now, Scorpio, you may know, has those 3 symbols associated with its archetype, and those symbols represent that process of transformation that Scorpio undergoes as it shifts its consciousness. It starts with the scorpion, which is kind of the lower form of consciousness. It can be vindictive and malevolent and manipulative, and it likes to sting, right? It likes to seek revenge. It likes to be in control. Uh, and then it shifts into the higher perception of the eagle, where it can see the bigger picture. And from that point of view, it gains wisdom. And through that wisdom, Scorpio then chooses to sacrifice itself, its old form, its old ego, and die to itself and be reborn as the phoenix. And from the phoenix, it rises from the ashes and it becomes a higher form of consciousness, expressing itself with greater integrity and spiritual alignment. Easy, right? So that is what's going on with our perception and our communication. And again, it's how we are looking at reality and how we are looking at ourselves. Now, and mind you, that's very tricky energy. Again, yachts, it feels like you're presented with an unsolvable problem. And the way through that dilemma is to embrace the paradox, embrace the fact that you can't resolve, that you can't uh, mediate these energies. They both just have to coexist separately from each other with equal value. It's a paradox, right? So, the idea is that you will, if you surrender to the energy, you will be divinely realigned. I hope that makes sense. Okay, let's look at other aspects going on, because this is just one thing, folks. This is just one part of it. Okay. Do I want that one? Yes, I do want that one. Okay. So we have a lot happening during this full moon, once again, that involves divine feminine energy. And this is a perfect example of that. And again, really all of the asteroid goddesses are involved. I mean, goddess asteroid Ceres is actually conjunct with the full moon itself. Pallas Athena is making an aspect to that. We're not really going to get into all that right now, but just know all the feminine wisdom is on board at this time. But a big notable aspect happening right now is this opposition between divine feminine wounded healer Chariklo in Aquarius and asteroid Mary Magdalena in Leo. They are exactly opposite of each other during this full moon. And then each of them is making a T-square aspect to Black Moon Lilith in Scorpio. Okay, so again, we have this theme of darkness being the portal into illumination. It's like an initiation process for each of us. We have to be willing to walk hand in hand with our own inner darkness in order to find the light. Okay. Because again, when you go into that like polarized perception of reality, that is one of the benefits of the polarity, is seeing the juxtaposition of 2 contradictory energies allows you to understand each of them better, right? Like if you have something that is white, you can perceive what is black better because it's so contrasted to what is white, and vice versa. It's that kind of a thing, right? And so essentially what we have with a T-square aspect pattern is we have 2 planets that are in opposition to each other. In this case, Mary Magdalena and Chariklo. They are at odds with each other. They are pushing and pulling, and there's tension, and they don't know what to do. Because it's an opposition aspect, we have our first theme of relationships entering the picture here. Because whenever we have oppositions, it automatically implies mirroring and relationships. So that's just the first little hint of that. There's going to be more of that coming along here, folks. But ultimately, what we have is this wounding around Aquarius energy, right? Shown through Chariklo, and she is the shaman, right? And we have this energy of either falling into groupthink and falling into trends and what the collective wave is moving us into, rather than standing in our own individual truth. and then neglecting our own creative impulse. We also could say that this energy expresses as this like wounded detachment, like an unwillingness to go into the heart because the heart is so sensitive and the heart represents vulnerability. And if we can remain aloof and detached, then we don't have to go into that heart energy. We don't have to be hurt. But Mary Magdalena is compelling us to embrace the heart energy because through the heart, that is where healing can be found. That is where wisdom can be found. That is where your creative source of energy, where your vitality is, where your unconditional love is. And that's actually what's going to help you blossom creatively in your life. But you have to be willing to risk the hurt, right? And so these are like two energies that are pushing and pulling against each other, and they're having difficulty resolving it. But then each of them is squaring Black Moon Lilith and Scorpio. Once again, we have Scorpio, we have the shadow, we have transformation, we have going inward, facing the demons, so to speak. And in a T-square aspect pattern, that apex point, the tip of the triangle, that planet represents the release point for this energy. So it's very tense energy, but once you move into that apex planet to release it, you find that relief. You find a through way for the energy to move. And that is through Black Moon Lilith. So once again, we have this divine feminine wisdom that's coming through inner darkness. So this might be asking us to look at the shadowy aspects of Aquarius and Leo and how we are expressing that energy. And what can we do to better integrate that energy? And that integration ultimately comes down to love, right? Because it's when we resist the shadow, it's when we judge the shadow that we only create further polarity within ourselves. In order to integrate, we have to learn to love the shadow. And it is easier said than done, for sure. So, this is an aspect that's going on at this time. What else we got? Oh, yeah. So, once again, talking about relationship energy, we have a minor grand trine showing up in this aspect pattern. So, we have Jupiter in Cancer at 23 degrees. Once again, we have Black Moon Lilith at 21 degrees of Scorpio. They are trining each other. And then each of them is forming a sextile to Venus in Virgo, and Venus is conjunct the South Node. So, this aspect pattern is really highlighting, it's actually it's less tense energy. So, this is one of our like happier aspect patterns, you could say, although it's not light and fluffy. uh, but this aspect pattern is helping us to integrate the inner child needs, the inner wounding that we have, the inner treasure that we have, that inner shadow. If you watched my Jupiter in Cancer video, I talked about how as Jupiter transits through Cancer, it's going to help us to dive deeply into ourselves. Part of diving deep into ourselves goes into our family history, it goes into our psychological foundations, emotional nurturing, emotional conditioning, childhood, home, family, all this stuff. And within that little journey, we discover the shadow, but the shadow has different dimensions to it. And we often think of the shadow as bad and dark and negative and all the icky stuff that we don't like to look at. And it can be that. But the shadow is also what is unacknowledged and undiscovered. And so, Jupiter, being the planet of grace and opportunity, is giving us an opportunity to come face to face with the aspects of ourselves that are undiscovered. And there is untapped potential within those shadows. So, we may have latent gifts and talents that have yet to be excavated and put to use. And so, that is partly what this configuration is showing us. Now, what we are uncovering within ourselves actually offers tools. And those tools get applied to Venus. Now, Venus is about relationships. So here we go again. We have, how we love and want to be loved. We have all different types of relationships, right? It doesn't just have to be romantic, although it can be, but we are also talking about family, friends, work, coworkers, friends, whatever, the gambit of relationships. Uh, and but Venus is also first and foremost about our self-worth, because we can only arrive at love with other people when we learn to love ourselves first. We have to learn how to receive love. And that very much is what this configuration is pointing to, especially with Venus being in Virgo. We have to love the self first. We have to find the inner light before we can, combine our light with other people's light. And so we are being given tools that may help us understand ourselves better and why we have not been able to successfully do that so far in our lives, or in what ways our relationships have been dysfunctional, or in what ways we have been not following our light, not following our true destiny, our true path. Because again, this is an Aries full moon, right? It kind of comes back to that destiny, that pioneering path that we are all being called toward through spiritual realignment, which we're all getting into right now, right? But this is part of the closing of the old cycle. So we have new relationships that we are forming, right? Through the end of this year, as we go forward into next year, we are meeting new people. We are aligning with our soul tribes. We're aligning with our divine counterparts. We are networking with people that we want to collaborate with. There's all kinds of really cool stuff happening for those that are in alignment with their spiritual path. But we have to shed and release the old stuff from the past to make sure that it's not going to get in the way of what we're building in the future, right? And this configuration gives us tools, and it gives us information, and it gives us deep, profound emotional insight that's going to help us align better with our center, cultivate that self love, that self worth, and allow us to open up to receive love from other people. And then also to give it, right? You give and you receive. It's all part of the same process. So, this is actually a really cool alignment going on. But I do want to note that Jupiter is also squaring Chiron in Aries at this time. So, there is going to be friction coming through that as well. We may have some wounds coming up around self, identity, independence, and versus our emotional nurturing, our childhood, what we received from our families, or the conditioning that we received through our ancestry, our heritage, those types of things. They're kind of in conflict with each other, and we have to work through that friction and that tension to find the inner pearls of wisdom and to kind of shift into a higher expression of that. And we can all totally do it. Just be aware that there's going to be some tension surrounding all of these aspects. Okay, very last, once again, we have another configuration that is highlighting relationships. So again, relationships. This makes sense, right? Because a full moon, right? We have the moon opposite of the sun. So the full moon is in Aries, but that means the sun is in Libra. Libra is ruled by Venus. Venus rules relationships. So we really are coming into better balance in our relationships. But again, it's centered in the self first, because whatever manifests outside of yourself, it's something that originated within yourself. And so it's doing this inner work to kind of make things manifest in a more harmonious way outside of yourself. So here we have another aspect pattern that is showing this kind of relationshipy sort of theme happening. So we have goddess asteroid Juno, which is the goddess of marriage. She is the goddess of the twin flame. Now, the twin flame can be a relationship with another person, but it is also your relationship with your higher self. It represents divine alchemical union in the Hieros Gamos, right? So, which is not always like easy peasy. It's a hard one kind of thing. And she is exactly opposite of Uranus at the time of this full moon in Aries. So Uranus, once again, is in Gemini. Juno's in Sagittarius. So Uranus is wanting us to decondition our perception around these topics, right? we may have certain ideas or ideologies around these relationships or what we want for relationships or our relationship with our higher self. And honestly, with Juno being uh, the divine feminine energy, she's kind of working together with Uranus on this to deliver like higher truth that helps inform our perception so that we can decondition that deeply entrenched kind of polarized thinking that we have, that it's either or thinking. Sagittarius helps us to rise above into a greater philosophical, cosmological truth that is more holistic in its perspective and more embracing of the paradox of reality versus needing things to be, neatly organized in their little boxes and differentiated from each other. So, how does that apply to relationships though? Well, we also have Juno forming a trine with Neptune at 0 degrees of Aries. Again, 0 degrees, we have a new beginning, we have something that is being birthed, and plus being in the cardinal sign of the first sign of the zodiac, this is a whole brand new cycle. So it's implying that our truths, our higher truths, the wisdom that we carry, the perceptions that we carry surrounding relationships and divine union, whether that is divine union with a counterpart, a physically manifested person in your life, or whether that is divine union with your higher self. It doesn't matter. It's the same thing, right? uh, we're starting a whole new cycle here. We have to change the way that we think about these things. We have to shift our perspective and step into something more holistic, something that is going to help us upgrade in our consciousness so that we are more spiritually aligned. Neptune wants us to embrace that unconditional love, right? So, and mind you, Juno, being the goddess of marriage, she was married to Zeus, and Zeus didn't treat her very well, and she had to put up with a lot of crap from Zeus. And she did some things that weren't so great either. They had a very contentious marriage, but they stayed in that marriage together. And so she also represents commitment. And so it is kind of redefining what that means to us and moving into a greater uh, more like agape, more divinely loving, unconditionally loving perspective in order to facilitate more harmonious relationships. And then again, this can be you with your higher self as well, right? And again, going back to all this shadow stuff, there's a lot of shadow stuff coming up at this time. And that shadow is part of you, right? So the idea is that you go deep into yourself and you confront the shadow and then you embrace it with unconditional love. And that allows you to move into greater divine union with yourself. And when you do that, you are able to manifest or shift the dynamics. You're either able to manifest a divine union with someone physically incarnated, a relationship in your life, or if you already have that relationship, you can shift the dynamics within that relationship so that it's more harmonious, right? Because again, what is the point to all of this? Let's get out of this. Let's get out of all that. How you guys doing? I feel like I'm just talking a mile a minute here. What is the point to all of this? Well, we all have a lot of really important work ahead of us, spiritually speaking, as we look ahead towards the future, as we look at the way that the earth is changing, as we look at how humanity is shifting. We can see, even just looking out into the collective, there is a lot of chaos, there's a lot of darkness, there's a lot of destruction. These are the shadows that are surfacing in our outer reality. It is so easy to look at those things and see them as separate from yourself and see them as something that exists beyond your little bubble of reality. But the truth is, and again, that's a very Gemini perspective, right? Like, that's not me, that's them, that's it, that's over there, right? But the truth of it is that we are all interconnected, right? And again, we're talking about shifting like through, the Uranian archetype being in Gemini, And through all of this shadow work, we're talking about shifting our perception of reality itself. I've been talking about this a lot. I'm really big on Uranus this year, you guys. Even though there are a lot of aspects going on in general, a lot of stuff going on with the outer planets, they're all important. I just particularly feel drawn to Uranus. I feel like it's extra important, or I just find it extra fascinating. But Gemini represents that polarity, and then it has to be balanced by its sister sign, Sagittarius. Sagittarius will give Gemini the tools to kind of rise above and take like a more of a bird's eye view of things. And when it does that, Gemini is able to actually take one and two and create three, right? It's no longer stuck in those polarized dynamics. And so that is part of the point of all of this, what we're going through right now. It's seeing what's out in the world and recognizing that it is actually a manifestation of dynamics that exist within you. That's your shadow that you're looking at. As much as hard as that is to swallow, as difficult as that is to see, um, because ultimately, each of us is being compelled to love our shadow because that is how we heal, that is how we integrate, and that is how we step into divine alignment with ourselves, right? That is the Heroes Cosmos. Um, so, oh, that's what I was going to say is that Gemini is an air sign, right? Air, it has to do with breath. Gemini literally rules our lungs and it has to do with breathing. So, it is through that breath. What's the one thing we are all doing? No matter where we are in the world, no matter who we are, and it's not just humans, right? It's animals, it's plants. What are we all doing? We are all breathing. We all take in breath. And the breath is spirit, right? We are all imbued with spirit. So, this is the interconnectedness of everything that we are being called to recognize. And that includes the shadow. And again, as hard as this, and I'm not like undermining how hard this is, it is one of the hardest things to do, especially from this human ego perspective. But it is something that we are all compelled to do in order to shift into higher consciousness, in order to hold the template for new earth. We have to raise the bar to that higher octave, and that higher octave resonates at the frequency of unconditional love. Unconditional love accepts even the darkness, right? And it's not that we are approving of the darkness, that's a different thing, right? It's more that we are recognizing that there is no lines of delineation between self and other because we are all part of the same soup. And so the darkness that I witness in you is actually an aspect I am seeing reflected back, which is me, right? So it really comes down to going into the self and loving the self. And that is what this full moon is really about. Aries, identity, self. We are releasing old patterns that keep us from doing this. Anything that keeps us in resistance to this love, to this inner harmony that we could attain. So that's kind of very soapboxy, and I'm sorry if that was a little intense. But that is what's happening right now, and we are being shifted into this higher level of awareness so that we can move forward because we have important work to do. Each of us has something important to do, whether that's like moving out into the world and being some kind of a visible leader for other people, or whether that is being a leader in your own life and just taking care of the people that you love or doing the creative work that only you can do. It's going to show up in so many different ways, and every single way that it manifests is important. We are all pieces of this bigger puzzle, this tapestry, right? We're all threads in the tapestry. If we're missing one thread, it doesn't get made. Like we need every single piece, right? So every single one of us is important in our own way. We are all doing important work. And that is part of what's happening right now. We are wrapping up the old cycle as we move into the new cycle. And the news cycle has big, beautiful things and very important work and better alignment and just beautiful relationships. But we have to wrap up some of this old stuff. And we need to embrace the shadow and we need to face that and we need to find our inner treasure through the unrecognized, unacknowledged aspects of ourself, as scary as it may be. Aries is brave, right? Aries is courage. So we are being called to summon our courage to do this work. And there will be beautiful gifts, beautiful blessings that go along with it when you do that. So keep in mind, this is going to be intense energy. So, just from a very practical perspective, if you have planets in your chart that are at any of these degrees, I mean, man, if you have planets that are at those early degrees of the cardinal signs, even if it's like Capricorn or Cancer or Libra or definitely Aries, yeah, give yourself some extra space. If you have planets that are near 14 degrees in your chart, that's where the full moon is. So you'll be feeling some of the heat of this. So just give yourself extra love, extra self care, extra conscientiousness and awareness. And also be aware that other people might be acting a little loony around this full moon because that can happen anyway. But again, it's a super moon. Super moon, I mean, it's exactly as it sounds. The moon is closer to the earth, it's bigger, so its energy is felt more intensely, more acutely. So just keep that in mind. There might be a little bit of looniness going on. So self care, self reflection, unconditional love. We've all got this. It's going to be a beautiful new beginning. And I think I've said everything I need to say. So, thank you so much for watching. Please, once again, like and subscribe if you feel called to do so. I really, really appreciate it. And I just want to say thank you for being here. I wish you all a very blessed full moon, and I will catch you on the flip side. Bye.